Considering Web 2 and the emergence of Web 3 and the evolution of Web 3, where are you seeing kind of Winamp in 5 to 7 years with all of this stuff happening?
But something about Web 2 and Web 3 is interesting because for me, the music industry and the art is a little bit locked in Web 1.5 for me.
Mm,
Because if you look to Web 2, sorry, it's a way to try to be a merchant, to try to sell something. But this is not the case. All these artists are locked in huge platform. They cannot decide about their price. They cannot decide about the promotion. They decide about nothing.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. Now, I haven't said that in a long time, and I'm sure you haven't heard me say that unless you've been listening to previous episodes, of course. So, our first guest is Alexandre, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name because I will butcher it, and I don't want to do that. Alexandre is the CEO of Winamp. Now, for those young ones who are listening, if you're not familiar with Winamp, it was a media player that was Windows only. Believe it or not, they still have 83 million monthly users worldwide. That is a lot of users. So Alexandre and I will dig into the history of Winamp. We'll also talk about how Winamp is bridging the gap between creators and fans because that is so vital today. One of the other things that we talk about is how Winamp is embracing Web3 technology. Before I let you go and we dive into this episode, I want to remind you to sign up to my email list, which is in the show notes below. Please follow me on Instagram, TikTok, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any podcast platform that you listen to podcasts on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and hit that subscribe button. It's always helpful to grow the show. Without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with the CEO of Winamp, Alexandre. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you because I've been reading quite a bit about Winamp's kind of comeback, and I've been hearing a lot about Winamp. So I want to definitely dig into all of that. But first of all, where are you coming to us from? Are you, if I remember, you were in Brussels?
Yes, I'm in Brussels for the moment. So the large part of the team is here in Brussels, center of Europe. But we have also other people outside of Brussels. But the main part of the team is really in Brussels.
Okay. And how many people do you have on the team?
So the Winamp team, the size of Winamp team today, we are 60 person working on the new Winamp. And I will say that some people are in Brussels, in Paris too, and we have some people in the US also.
Okay. Cool. So before we jump in, for those who are not familiar with Winamp, can you kind of
Mhm.
give us a brief overview, maybe a little bit of history? Because Winamp's been around for many years. So give
Yeah,
us kind
yeah,
of a
yeah.
brief history.
It's a product from the last century because Winamp started in '97. So it was really a product to listen to something on the internet. It was a player, basically a player. And I think it was perhaps the first player really to listen to the MP3 files, and
Hmm.
I think that the MP3 files is today what we know, perhaps because Winamp was there at the beginning, really to listen to this type of file. But it was really a well-known player because I will say that 5 years later, just that in 2002, 2003, we had more than 250 million users on the planet.
Wow.
But it was not our product because Winamp was really a startup, and after the startup was part of the AOL group. And so we bought Winamp in 2013 to AOL when they decided to stop the AOL music project.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. And how long have you been with Winamp?
So I was there since the first day when we decided to buy. But it was really a kind of nightmare to move the technology from AOL to us. It was really a huge job. We have worked during a little bit more than 1 year to do that. But yes, today we have a total control of Winamp. We have still a lot of user, really worldwide. Today, every month, more than 80 million user use Winamp to listen to something. And today it's not just to listen to an MP3, but a lot of person use Winamp to listen to podcast, to listen to radio station, or something like this. But today it's basically a player and a software for Windows. And so this is not the future for Winamp because we want to build a new product with Winamp, really a cross platform product, but also with a lot of new features.
Mm, okay. So, what has kind of been the evolution of Winamp? It was an online player to now, is it kind of like, does it function similar to like a Spotify or Apple Music where you have like a digital service provider, or is it just a player?
That's a good question because we'll say that in 2017, when we decide to think what will be the future of Winamp, the first and logical idea was to create a subscription service in Winamp. Because we have a lot of user and perhaps to give to them directly in Winamp a subscription service was perhaps a good idea. But I think it was not perhaps the best one because on the subscription model you have a lot of competition.
Mhm.
And we know that there is a lot of companies and it's not so easy to manage this type of company to try to make a subscriber. And so the way to reinvent Winamp is perhaps to have two parts. The first part is to try to give the best listener experience to someone. And so we want to aggregate in one place, in one player, all the different things that you would like to listen. Because today the listening experience of someone is really different than 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Today, you want to listen to your favorite podcast, to your MP3, if you have still some MP3s on your computer. You want to listen to podcasts, to a radio station, to audiobooks, and also to be able to listen to your favorites or your playlist that you have with your subscription provider. And I don't know if you have the same experience than me, but if I want to have this type of experience in one place, it's really difficult. You
Mhm.
can perhaps have this type of experience if you are an Apple user, because we have some tools that you can use to have this type of a feature. But if you are not on Apple, it's really difficult. You need to navigate from one player to another player, from TuneIn to Spotify to I don't know which place, to Google Podcast to listen to your favorite podcast. And so for me, this is not really the best experience. And so on the listener side, we want to aggregate all this type of experience because we know that in the than today, but the listener decide to listen to someone to something in the morning, and it can be a radio, and during the day at the office it's to Spotify or another type of service like this. So it's really something that we need to invent because you cannot find today a place where you can have all this type of experience in one place.
Mhm. So, you're working to be kind of like a Spotify, but much more robust.
I will say so. It will be not possible in William to subscribe to a service like Spotify, but we really prefer to aggregate the different type of listener experience that you need to have. So Yes, today in Spotify, for example, you can listen to some podcasts, but it's perhaps tomorrow to some audiobooks, if I understand well. But you cannot listen to your own MP3. If you want to listen to a radio station, it's impossible. And so, and you need to be a Spotify subscriber. So I will say that we can be a complement of any subscription model service.
Hmm. So, how you have, I believe it was over 80 million monthly users. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So, of those, what are kind of the listenings? How do these people listen to music? Are you finding them popping in, listening to a song and bouncing? Are you finding them with a mixture of different services? How are they
Mhm.
kind of using Winamp?
So today we see that a lot of users they use Winamp to listen to a radio station.
Ah,
And when you talk to a radio station, when you look to their different statistic, you can see it depends on the country, but you can see that the online audience, I will say between 4 and 12%. It depends really where you are. Will arrive from the Winamp player. So in terms of time of use, the most important time is to listen to a station, and after is basically to listen to your own MP3 or your favorite music that you have on your computer.
mm, okay. So, where are kind of the Winamp users located? Are they
Mhm.
primarily in Europe? Are they in the United States? Where are they located primarily?
So what we have seen this last 10 years is really a move from the west to the east.
Okay.
18% are in the US.
Okay.
More than 35% are in large Europe,
Okay.
and 38% are in Asia.
Okay.
But that was not the case 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had more than 25 to 30% of users in the US. So we see a real move from the west to the east.
Okay. So as Winamp is kind of aggregating these different experiences,
Mhm.
are you going to push various, because you're not strictly music, you do podcasts, you do audiobooks, and then whatever audio file that is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are you finding that you're going to build in some kind of discovery algorithm or for discovering music and podcasts and audiobooks, or
Mhm.
are you going to strip that all of that?
Mhm. So yes, inside I cannot say everything because you will see it when the product is there. But
Sure.
we
Sure.
want to find another way to suggest to the user some new things because what I see when I'm a user of a platform, and I can talk about YouTube or any type of platform, that sorry, you receive a lot of things to discover, and sometimes it's really difficult to find really the your perfect choice. So we will do that really in another way. And so we will suggest not a list of 25, 30 different stations. We want to be really more precise and to suggest once a week some really precise things. It can be an audiobook, it
Mm.
can be a podcast, it can be one artist. But this is another way to present uh, some new type of discovery.
And how are you gathering the information to know what to recommend to somebody?
So this is some algorithm that we try to build for the moment in the company, uh, because when you receive information about the listener and what is listening, sometimes it's a good way to understand what can be his choice in terms of podcast, or what can be his choice sometimes in terms of audiobooks. We have some difficulty regarding to find some link with audiobooks, but we can find perhaps some interesting thing to suggest. But I would say that to jump from a track to a station to a podcast, it's not a so difficult exercise.
Mm, okay. So once you've recommended these audiobooks, these artists, these whomever you're recommending,
Hmm.
and you're trying to connect the listener with the owner, the platform or station or whatever you're recommending.
Hmm.
So you talked briefly, can you talk about how you're bringing artists and fans or content creators and fans closer
Hmm.
together?
Yeah, yes, because this is really the other part of Winamp, and this is
Yeah.
something really new because there is really the player, and we are really for listener there. But we will open also a new platform to creators. And
Mm,
for us, as creators, when we talk about sound, it can be a track, it can be an artist, it can be a podcaster, it can be a radio station. And so we want to provide a place where a creator can create their own subscription model. But when we talk about subscription model, it can be for money, but it can be also for free. So we want to create through Winamp for Creators a direct link with a community to share something. But to share, it can be more than just the music. It can be more than just a podcast. It can be also video, image, and things like that. But one of the goal is that we have is really to create this direct link between a station and a listener, between an artist and fans. And again, if the content is really interesting, if the content is really with value, the creators can ask for some money. This is a kind of Patreon model
mhm,
you know perhaps, and this is for us perhaps the future, one of the way that we can create in the future to bring more money for creators because we think also then subscription model it's really some interesting money, but it's just part of the money.
mhm,
In the last 15 years, there was perhaps a big lie for artists is that to say to them that, hey guys, just try to find a way to distribute your music on all these platforms and it will be so easy. You will receive your money and that's a so easy game that this is the game to play. Yes, it's a part of the game for us, but today to be there with a lot of artists, I think that everybody knows today that Spotify receives more than 100,000 tracks per day. So
mhm,
it's really a kind of jungle, and we think that there is really another way to create a more direct relationship between an artist and a fan. And
mhm.
if there is some value there, you can also ask for some money. And this is why we will have into the player what the name will be a fan zone, a place where you will follow one, two, three, four, five artists. I don't think we are fan on for I don't know 20 different artists, but from some really artists that you prefer, you can receive some exclusive content. But this is also true for podcast and for some station also.
Okay. Um, that's great. So how are you familiar with, like Web3 and all of
Hmm.
that?
Hmm.
So how is Winamp kind of adjusting to that? And do you see kind of a change in music streaming, in Web3? I mean, as we're decentralizing everything, we're trying to get away from these companies that hold the gate and the keys to everything. So, do you think Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Stitcher, all of those platforms will exist in Web3? Or do you see platforms more like Winamp that are more kind of focusing more on the creator taking hold?
So when we talk about the Web3, is really it's really I will say a technical solution
Mm-hmm.
to make the life easier for everybody. But what we see in the market today is that less people have really a control of a lot of the value chain. This means the large part of the revenue. And I'm not sure that they really want to change the way to run the business today, to distribute the value, because the reality is that the blockchain and the Web3 can really make a direct link, direct payment between the consumer and an artist, for example,
Mm-hmm.
a, from a radio station to a listener, for example,
Mm-hmm.
if you decide to pay for something. So I'm 100% and perhaps more supporter of this type of way, but I think it will take time, and it will be perhaps step by step. I think that if a platform, one of the biggest, one of, I don't know, is it Spotify, Deezer, or the other, decide perhaps for some artists to create a different way to pay them in a kind of blockchain program and things like that, it can be a start.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a real solution, but it will take time. But it's not because it will take time that we have not to jump in this type of solution, and perhaps to start with something. So Web3, NFTs, and other things like that are really interesting. And so in Winamp, we will start with some really basic things. Is that we will also put into our Winamp for creators an NFT program, really to protect the first the first track, because for us it's like a painting. There is a value about the first one, and the others are really copy of the first of the first one. And so we will create a special contract in the blockchain to protect the first file, and perhaps the first exchange will be at really a low price. But because in the Winamp contract we will put perpetual rights into the contract, this means that an artist that nobody knows today, and perhaps his brother will buy the NFT at $50, but this guy will be a big guy, a well-known artist in 20 years, and the NFT, the value will be perhaps 50,000. He will still receive money in the future in any transaction. This is for us a first step also to put a lot of artists into Web3, into the blockchain, and to try to evangelize with them. Then some new stream of revenue can also arrive. But the first step is not perhaps to make collectible and things like that. I think it's perhaps difficult at the beginning for some emergent artists, but we will start with this first contract to protect the first track, the original track of an artist.
Very cool. Very cool. So, as you know, considering Web 2 and the emergence of Web 3 and the evolution of Web 3, where are you seeing kind of Winamp in 5 to 7 years with all of this stuff happening?
But something about Web 2 and Web 3 is interesting because for me, the music industry and the art is a little bit locked in Web 1.5 for me.
Mm,
Because if you look to Web 3, Web 2, sorry, it's a way to try to be a merchant, to try to sell something. But this is not the case. All these artists are locked in huge platform. They cannot decide about their price. They cannot decide about the promotion. They decide about nothing. They
mhm,
are there, but they decide about nothing. And so for me, this is not Web 2, because in Web 2, you decide, you be a merchant, you create some product, you sell that by yourself, and all these type of things. And for me, I don't know why. If you look to 1 million website of artists, you will see that 99.99% they sell nothing on their website. And so for me, they have perhaps missed a little bit what will Web3, Web2 is not just the way to try to monetize something, but this is a part of Web2 with social media and other things like this. And so I think that now artists have more to take their future in their hand, perhaps to be a little bit in the sky with new ideas, and we can talk about Web3 regarding that, but still be feet on the ground and to say, hey guys, my future is not just perhaps to be on a subscription platform. I need to find new streams, new way to make revenue, and this is perhaps a step to go from 1.5 to 2.5 before to go to Web3.
Web3.
This is perhaps an image, but for me, for the music industry and all these artists, there is still a lot of things to do to try to bring them some decent revenue.
Mm-hmm. That's I think the importance of that is getting artists the money that they deserve and cutting out the middleman of Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon, all of those middlemen, because they take such a big cut.
Yeah, but these middlemen, they do some job too. So
Of course.
I will say
Of
that
course.
we have not to say I hate Spotify, I hate Amazon. They are part of the market. They did something really interesting for me. They have transformed the analogic money into digital money. That was
Mhm.
really the game during these last 10 years. Interesting, but now perhaps the artists, they need to be still in Spotify, they need to be still on Amazon and on Deezer, but they need also perhaps to think to new way to make some revenue.
And do you think the revenue in this Web 2.5 to Web 3 will be much more significant
I think so.
than Spotify? Just relying on
Yeah, I
Spotify
think
and Web
so.
2.0?
Definitely, in all the different models that we have built, that we have imagined with different type of artists, we see that for a small or medium artist, there is really more money to do
Mhm,
if you have a direct link with your fan. Because in the US, sometimes I don't think we have in the US the right image of the market. Why? Because all the US artists they sing in English, and so this is really something that you can distribute worldwide. But if you are a German artist,
mhm,
so German artist is for the 80 million Germans people on the planet. And so what is the reality about that is that today a German artist, his revenue has decreased by 70% if he has to
mm,
compare the CD life with the digital life. So it's not the case for Beyonce and David Guetta. Digital for them is really huge because in one weekend we can receive a lot of clicks, a lot of plays from everywhere. But this is not the case for any type of artist. And I think that for emergent artists, small one, medium one, if you can really aggregate a community of 2,000, 5,000 fans, you will really receive more money than on any digital platform where you can receive some money with your plays.
and that's a crazy statistic, but that's a good point. If you find 2,000 fans around the world, which I'm sure everybody can do if they really, really tried, can easily find 2,000 people that will heavily support their music and their project. So that can change their career rather than trying to go
Sure,
for
sure.
David Guetta and getting 70 million followers around the globe. That seems more
Mhm,
unrealistic than getting 2,000. So
mhm.
for a small medium artist, how would you recommend they start building that up to 2,000?
Yeah, so,
fans?
so today what we see is that they put a lot of stuff on social networks, Facebook, Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but this is without any value for them.
Mm-hmm.
Who receive the money is Facebook or Instagram, but nothing for them. So I think that they need really, but this is the case when we talk with artists. They produce really more content than the release that you can find on Spotify. There is
Mm-hmm.
the official release, but the reality is that there is really more things that they produce, that they
Mm-hmm.
play, that they make some live. So there is there a lot of contents. And today, it's really sometimes difficult to have access to this type of contents, and they need to create their own place, uh, their own place where they can share that, perhaps again in a different way. It can be free
Mm-hmm.
if you just want to look to, I don't know, image and video, but if you want to listen to exclusive tracks, for example, you can ask $1 2 per month, not perhaps 10 or 20, it depends. But I think this is really a good way to try to be a really digital artist, and to try also to touch people not just in your city but really worldwide, because this is something interesting also regarding the internet. You can touch people everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and to find 2,000 people who really like your country music, your I don't know, jazz music, it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really comes down to perspective. It's like when you think of, I'm never going to be a David Guetta. Well, the odds of that happening are much less likely. But finding 2,000 fans, that's achievable. I could do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
At the beginning, it can be friends and family, like
sure.
in any people from your city, and things like that. But yes, again, there is, I think, a different way to attract people, a different way to reward them. So there is really something to do there, and we see the success of Patreon.
Hmm.
Some people they have a really a huge community. And as you know, Patreon is not just on music. Music, I think, is just a 15 percent of Patreon user. So if you share something interesting, you will find people to follow you.
Hmm. Absolutely. That's a good point. Well, that's kind of all the questions that I have for you. I want to keep things short and really, really to the point, which we did. So thank you so much, Alex, for joining the show. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you offering your expertise and look forward to what Winamp does in the future.
Okay. Thank you for
You're
your
welcome.
time. Bye bye.